Jennifer. It's nice to see you again.
Oh, nice to see you too, Mary.
So the last time we saw each other, you were in the throes of school, and now that's done for the year. So uh, maybe you can just sort of keep us up to date on what that experience was like going
Uh,
back to class during
yeah,
the pandemic.
it's so exciting. Well, because of the pandemic, we were meeting on Zoom, and I have to say, I really, really loved it. And in the fall, we're going back to classrooms again, Simon Fraser University. So it's the graduate program in liberal studies. And in the fall, I was taking a writing course, and then in the spring, I took spring course was called. Uh, Trauma and transformation.
Oh,
And it was specifically looking at COVID, but with the materials that we were given in the course, we had a chance to think about some kind of change that we wanted to make in our lives and use this massive set of strategies to to work on them and then document them. So that
nice.
was just a fantastic course. So so his summer came and I thought, oh well, I want to do something this summer. So I'm taking a course through the Oxford Life Writing Program. So, again, these are is something that would never have happened, I think, without the pandemic and without people realizing that Zoom really does open up the whole world. I mean, there are people in that class from all over. So it's pretty exciting to be there.
I don't think there's ever a normal coming back.
Yeah.
But it'll be fascinating to see what we retain from that experience and what evolves and what we revert to.
Yeah, that's right, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, when we last touched base, you were talking about exploring nonfiction more,
Yes.
and you were very interested in uh, nonfiction narrative.
Yes.
So has that stuck with you or?
It has, yeah. And I was fortunate to be able to write for both courses that I took last fall at school. I was able to write a nonfiction narrative, creative nonfiction, for both classes. Actually,
Mm,
pretty wonderful. And that's what the Oxford Life Writing School is about. It's called Wolfson College, and it's all about autobiography and biography.
mm,
So it's looking at how we tell stories about ourselves or about other people and exploring different ways of doing that, right? Because I think we're used to a very traditional kind of narrative, with we talk about the subject and the details, the facts, and a writer might elaborate a little bit, but who's to say um, that you can't elaborate a lot,
mm.
right? And it's sort of looking at doing that little dance between what is um, telling someone's story in a more interesting way and what is just like weirdly making stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Stretching the truth a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a dance, I would imagine, but at the same time, there's it does bring more emotional impact to a story, just to have the context. It might not be the actual story that gets played with, but to get the context of the time and the space, and I think it really uh, is very valuable because we sort of, when we read something factual, we lose sight of all the interplay of emotions and politics and social conventions and whatever. And so it doesn't have the same impact, I think, in many cases.
That's right, Mary. And just even having an idea of what people were thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no way of knowing if that person was, in fact, thinking about that kind of person, but things that, someone might typically have been thinking about on their commute to work or, or talking about at parties.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Now, today you have a creative challenge for me, and just to let everybody know, I have no idea what it is, um, but I know I need paper and a pen. And
That's
that was enough. I said gel or normal, and that was
actually,
enough of a decision
I
on my
know, right?
part.
And when we're writing, right, we do get pretty particular about our writing utensils, right? So yeah,
I have to say, I actually really do. And I love gel because of the flow. And somehow my hand thinks that if the ink is flowing, my brain will too.
I
And the
feel the same.
words will flow.
I,
And you know what? It sort of does. And then I like colored uh, pens too. So I call them my play pens. And I do find it makes a difference, but with COVID, I've been writing enough that almost all the ink has run, so I need to run to Staples, get refills.
you do, yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
should check out Muji as well. Have you been to Muji on Robson?
It's pre-COVID.
Okay, but they have a lovely selection of gel pens.
I shall explore then.
Yeah, yeah, and my favorite is the old school classic Papermate stick pen,
uh,
uh, which I've used forever.
you know, those paper mates, they flow pretty well
Yeah, that's right.
and they don't get glummed up.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to see how they've changed because I used to be able to get one with a really lovely violet colored ink, which
Mm.
I haven't seen for, oh, a few years now. And they used to come in, fine or medium point, and which they don't, everything seems to be medium point now. I mean, it's all fine, but it's just because the gel pens are so attractive, and yeah, it just all changes in how we live in the world.
You know, this is so fascinating. I never once thought to ask people what their favorite writing implement was, but it's actually really fascinating.
Right? Because yeah, when you are spending time with that medium, I mean, it'd be like painting in the brushes and the media that you use, it's like it's your tool. Yeah, it has to be something
Yeah.
that you feel very comfortable with.
And it just occurred to me, I once read, it was about some article on the technique of writing, and 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 it was sort of spontaneous writing when you're writing without any editing filter whatsoever. And they said you should never cross a word. Like if you don't like it, you should just skip and put in the word you want, because the act of crossing it out brings in the editing mind. It was really a fascinating article. Likewise, if you're writing with pencil, never to erase, because of course that does take some time. And again, it's just telling the mind you're erasing an idea. Have you played with those notions yourself?
Well, Mary, you may be interested in your writing challenge.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should stop avoiding it and actually ask you what it is. Because, you know, I have to say, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I was like actually a little bit nervous saying, oh no, like real time challenge. But this is all play. I'm supposed to be an advocate for play. So this is all play and no expectations and no intention.
And no Pulitzer Prize
And,
members
and it's not
watching
going
it
to be
at this
political.
moment.
No, no, no.
Well, and there gets, you can get into, I mean, about the 10,000 hours, right? That if you want
Yes, I
to,
don't believe in the 10,000 hours.
I don't either really. However, what I do agree with is that we shouldn't expect to get something right the first time.
Yes, that's for sure. That I totally agree with.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, are you ready?
Okay, I am ready.
So, Mary, what you are going to do is write a piece of, should you accept the challenge, is write a piece of flash fiction, 3 to
Okay.
500 words. So there are going to be a few steps, and at each step you have some options.
Okay.
So the first thing is to talk about the topic. And so what I would like you to do is I'm going to list 3 things and think about if one of them resonates a bit more strongly with you than the others. So that would be to write about a place, and it can be a place you know or a place you would like to know and have clearly in your mind. It can be a place you go to or a place you haven't seen for a long time, just a place that resonates with you. It can be a piece of music, or it can be a meal.
Mm, okay. So I think I will go with place.
Okay. So your next task is
Okay.
to make a list of between 5 to 10 things that you remember or think of about that place.
Okay. 10 things?
5 to 10.
5 to 10. Okay. You can entertain me more. I'm on number 9 so far. I'm seeing some parallels because I'm doing it quickly. Or not parallels as much as some repetition. And it's an interesting exercise because a lot of feelings are coming out of place rather than the place itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fine, right? Because
Yeah.
there's okay. So, are you willing to read those out, or would you rather
Oh,
read?
no, I'm totally happy to read them out. So my place is Cordoba. As you may know, I'm a dual national. My mother was from Spain. And we were planning to go just prior to the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
It was, we had plans to go in March of last year to Spain. And I pulled the plug when I saw that COVID was in Italy. But I wanted to return to Cordoba because my family doesn't know it. But I haven't been back since I was about 19.
Wow.
Yeah. Is that right? Yeah, around there. I was 18, 19. And what makes Cordoba so special is the amazing mosque, which happens to be my wallpaper on my
Oh, wow.
computer. And it's just the most magnificent structure that I've ever been to.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Granada has its Alhambra, which is certainly magnificent, but this mosque in Cordoba is uh, even more so in the sense that it's gigantic. So for me, my number one thing was that it gives me a lot of peace. Uh, and number 2 was golden atmosphere because I went to Cordoba in the height of summer, and it's a very dry part of the world. So everything is this sort of golden sandy color. That's how I remember it, because that's how southern Spain is. It doesn't see much rain at all, but it's wonderful because in terms of palette, it's you feel golden, and of course, Cordoba was the golden age of Spain, when Jews, Muslims, and Christians actually lived in harmony together. Number 3 is magnificence, because you just feel it's such an amazing architectural gem. Feeling small but safe, because of course, comparatively, you're small, but you know what? You are small in the world too. Serenity, feeling one. So I felt very much like that is the world and I am one with the world. Number 7, awe of man's potential. And number 8, it's a cultural icon for the reasons I just said, but it's also in modern times a sad example of the clash of cultures and religions because the Catholic Church took it over. And in recent years, there's been a real tug of war for the Muslim community. And number 9 was my youth because I was so young at the time, and innocence.
Okay, great. Thank you. It is very, very rich in ideas and imagery and so on. So yeah, that's a wonderful starting point. So your next challenge, or the next part of the challenge, should you accept it, is to do 10 minutes of free writing.
Okay.
And by free writing, I mean what you were talking about, which is you start writing and you don't stop for 10 minutes. You don't stop for anything. You don't cross out a word. If you can't think of a word in English or Spanish, say, just write something or other, and it's a placeholder. So you can go back and put in the word that you actually want, if you're looking to be precise, but don't stop writing for any reason. And even if you lose your train of thought, just write placeholders. Again, you're writing blah, 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 or I like cheeseburgers, or whatever crosses your mind, but just keep writing for 10 minutes.
Okay, you're going to time me?
I can do that for sure.
Are you going to sing to me while I write?
I thought I'd put myself on mute, actually, so. So no distractions. It's roughly 10 minutes now.
Okay.
So it could be out by a few seconds, but not much.
Okay, lots of run-on. My most effective way of writing is not having complete sentences. James Joyce, that's the way to go.
Perfect, right? Perfect. Yeah.
Well, for this exercise, yeah.
So if you were journaling, that just might be a way to do it, and to just kind of get rid of anything. But if you're shaping a story, and so now in terms of the next part of the assignment, should you accept this challenge, not done in real time, because you probably have pretty close to 300 to 500 words already.
Yeah.
So if you do want to take this challenge on, what I would encourage you to do is think about whether you want to make it a piece of fiction and put somebody else in the story, or if you want to write it like a personal narrative, I.
Mm.
And if you have a sense of that, we could talk about that a bit more, but it may be something that you want to think about a bit later, and use all of the information that you have written down to create your story. Now, what happens with the list quite often now, because I imagine you're a little deeper than the average bear, sometimes people just talk about the physical structure, or they might talk about something that happened there, or, usually we don't go deep with the list, but you did go deep right away. But quite often what can happen is with the list, people come up with the kind of more general descriptive things, and maybe 1 or 2 emotional attachments, or sound memories, or texture memories, or something like that. And it's the writing nonstop that tends to bring up kind of the more evocative and emotional things. Although, I mean, it's not always the case. So
in my case, it's almost 100% evocative, and I almost had to put the place in because so I sort of struggled with that a bit while writing, because I like not talking about the structure almost at all, but what feelings it evoked. So I don't know how balanced it is.
It's fine. It doesn't need to be, because now it's for editing.
Mm.
right? And you can accept and reject every single sentence that you've written and every single structure that you've written. And, as you're thinking about your story more, you may, I mean, keep your mind open to fragments of music that you may have heard at the time, or what you may have been thinking at the time, or what it might be like to meet up with your younger self, I mean, because you will meet up with your younger self when you go, right? You
Hmm.
absolutely will.
Hmm.
Um, right. And I mean, it's just kind of you can't help it. Can't help but think of the last time you were there, right?
Right.
And what was important to you then and how you felt then. And, you know, yeah, it'll be very interesting. So you might imagine that now, or, I mean, as you were writing, I was also writing. And even though
Oh,
I haven't
really?
actually seen that place, it's one of the things that came up for me in terms of fiction is like who I started out by thinking about the contrast of, because you described that golden light, which sounds so magnificent. Um, but there must also be dark places, and are there secret places, and where would someone go to hide, and why would they
Mm.
be hiding, and what would they be hiding from? And so, there are lots, and well, that's where my mind goes. Your mind may go somewhere else too, thinking about the gardens and the texture. Oh, I was wondering, because you said the Catholics had taken possession of it for the longest time, what it would be like to hear, for example, Gregorian chants coming out of a mosque. Like, was
Yeah.
it lovely, or was it slightly weird?
Hmm. Hmm. I and I think that's where the play of time comes in, because uh, if it were at the time when there was all the golden age of Andalusia, when there was harmony, then it would be a lovely thing. I think now it depends who you are. It depends what faith you're in. I think in many ways, pick what faith you have, because certainly hearing it now is just a sort of salt to the injury for having lost. And I have to say, now that I'm thinking of it, and you're very successful in evoking the part of the story that may be actually more interesting than where I was going in my free writing, which was almost purely evocative in terms of how I felt um, out of time in that place. Although you still have the memory, as you say, the memory of times past, and you think about what would it sound like just to hear Arabic, and the calls to prayer, and all of that strangeness, but not strangeness, which is all Spain. But uh, I think the better approach to this little story, and let's see if I can do it, is that I went there as part of a bus tour of the south of Spain, because I had always wanted to see the jewels of the crown, which are Sevilla, Cordoba, and Granada. But whenever I went to Spain, I always stayed with relatives. That's actually one of the pitfalls of having relatives in foreign countries, because you actually end up not seeing what all the tourists end up seeing in many cases, right? Because you're visiting them and they may not be um, mind you, in Spain, it's hard not to be in an area that doesn't have any tourist value. But nonetheless, I hadn't seen what most people who travel to Spain have seen, so I wanted to go, but my family wouldn't let me go alone at such a young age. I was like 18, and they were worried. So they put me on this bus tour, and I was like the only single person. So I did mention that, how I felt like a wrench in this group. Um, but what was fascinating, and it has always stayed with me all this time, that there was a couple on their honeymoon. Another thing I didn't understand at the time, like, if you're on your honeymoon, why are you on a bus tour? Like, seriously. They were a delightful couple from Bahrain. And I did ask, what are you doing on a bus tour in southern Spain? And they said, to see our heritage.
Wow.
And it just, I've never forgotten that whole concept, that the jewels in your cultural heritage are not only in another country, but they're not even in a country of that same faith.
Right. Right.
And how odd is that? And I mean, they were essentially on a pilgrimage, and they had no resentment or anything. But it really struck me how bizarre that. And I think I mentioned it to them, and they said, yeah, it's like totally bizarre. But there you have it. You know, they were quite pragmatic about the whole thing. But, you know, you wonder how painful that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, and how lovely too that your 18 or 19-year-old self was open to that conversation and that they felt comfortable sharing that with you. I
Yeah.
mean, that's quite a feat.
Yeah. They were amazing. They were very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, the story could be about them as well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the lens is wide open for
Mm-hmm.
what you might want to focus on. And I mean, 300 words is not that much, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not that intimidating. I think I do have to make it more story and less feelings. I think as soon as I do that free writing, I go into feelings right away.
Yeah.
And do you, or I mean, how do you introduce more play about fiction rather? I mean, is it just because we're women and that's how we process emotions in some ways? I know some people write, other people, as I mentioned before, some people do their painting meditations, but how can we make that leap into fiction?
Yeah. Well, for example, with that particular story, or the what you shared with me, um, for example, if you were to be that couple on that trip, so you may not remember, or you may not have known, because 18 or 19, we don't all, like, you had an amazing conversation with them, but we don't, we think differently now, right?
Yeah.
We're curious about different things than you might have been at the time. So, you might be thinking how right. So imagine the young woman is getting on the bus and we don't know anything about her, but she's with her husband, they're on their honeymoon. So that's a very, very special time. But together they might have been quite terrified about speaking English or speaking Spanish, depending on what was going on. Completely different culture. They might not have been able to find food that they wanted. They may have felt really like fish out of, they may have felt like the wrench
Mm.
in the adventure, right? So you could think about it from maybe her perspective. Um, you know,
Mm.
at that time, would she have been able to marry freely, or would that have been right? So I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, and of course, with the passage of time, we sort of reinvent and fill in the gaps, probably.
Which is
But
fine, right?
yeah,
Right
and
fiction.
but I thought they were very much in love, but I'm sure it was probably an arranged marriage too. I who knows? But because most, I think, at that time, probably upper middle class, likely that was the situation. But
Now, were those the days when was she wearing Western clothes or was she
she
wearing?
was wearing Western clothes, but she had henna. So it was the first time I saw the henna all over her hands, feet, arms. Yeah.
Would that have been fresh from the wedding? I wonder.
Yes.
Wow.
And I had never seen it before, and it was just amazingly detailed. So, yeah,
Yeah,
very curious.
that's a gorgeous detail as well, right? Because
Yeah.
it's pretty magical to have that on you, and
Mm-hmm.
what a symbol that is. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So lots. You have so much to work with.
I'm intrigued how you went to darkness and mysteriousness right away. So is
That's where my head goes.
my head normally goes there too.
Why would I go for the light when I can go for a
For the
cave?
dark. Yay. But you also evoked the flowers, which I hadn't. But of course, that is uh, the postcard of Cordova is the hanging plants everywhere
Ah,
on the white walls, uh, iron grating. You know that whole uh, sunlit uh, pastiche with the red geraniums bombing at you. That is Cordova also.
wow,
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful. And that's a very strong image as well, with
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just that palette of
Mm-hmm.
the kind of sun bleached colors and the gold and then this bright, bright red. Assuming they're red, I mean they may be other
They're
colors.
almost always red in Spain. Red geraniums. You have to have red geraniums everywhere. I wanted to get back to this notion of the different frame of mind you have to be in between free writing and structured writing and editing. And is that what you find, that you have like a different mentality for each?
Yeah, I do, Mary, and I do find that different parts of the day are better for different tasks. So, for example, in the morning, I think I have a much clearer, more analytical mind than I might have later in the day. Um, so, if I'm editing, I mean, when things are going really smoothly in ideal world, what happens is I spend maybe an hour in the morning editing and then continue on.
And do you use this process with the lists yourself?
I do sometimes. I definitely do if I get stuck.
Mm.
Definitely do. And sometimes too, I might use free writing to write a monologue. If I have a character that I don't think is saying what I want that character to say, what I want them to say, um, I may give them the option of speaking for themselves, right? And sometimes
Mm.
that actually can change things because characters
Mm.
do have their own lives and their own thoughts about things, right? And yeah, and sometimes it's way, way more interesting than anything that the writer may assign them.
Mm-hmm. I've been playing with this notion of using the recorder on my phone that transcribes to text rather than writing,
Ah,
because I often find that, well, number one, that I filter things out from my brain to the paper, like right off the bat.
yeah,
And number two, my brain is way faster than my hand.
Yes.
And I always think I'm going to remember, but I don't. And I took a course from Jean Houston once. Do you know Jean Houston?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. And she was asked how how is she such a prolific writer? Not why, but how. And that's what her method is. And her method is just to verbal diarrhea, essentially. And then she says it's so much easier after because you transcribe to text and you can rework it and edit it and shape it, but you have something to work with, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good starting point. Well, I think that's a fabulous idea. It had never occurred to me to try that, but I will.
It was just when you said monologue, I thought, well, how interesting would it be just to say it
Yeah,
impromptu?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
improvise.
a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I like your. Are you going to write a Cordova 300-word piece? I can reverse challenge you. You can do the darkness.
I could do, sure. Sure.
You don't have to. I'm just teasing. But I will. So how many days are you giving me for my 3 to 500 word story?
Oh, what feels comfortable for you, Mary?
Well, we're Thursday. I think by Sunday, I'm
Okay.
going to say Sunday, I shall have it finished and I shall read it out to you.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, my actual, I don't know how much I will stick with what I wrote. But I guess there are a couple ideas there.
Exactly, right? And yeah, and it may be that, tomorrow morning when you're having your shower, you go, oh, why didn't I think of that? I mean,
Yeah.
once the
Why is
seed
it always
planted,
in the shower that we have these great ideas, you know?
I know.
It's not
Yeah.
fair. I have to bring the recorder in the shower.
Try to get the microphone installed right
That's
beside
right.
your head. Or you could choose creative nonfiction as well, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
should you wish.
Well, all my creative nonfiction now would be quite creative as we look back on this.
It's fine, but I mean, there may be a fragment of a song or a fragment of a poem from somebody you loved at the time, or you know what I mean? There's like there are lots and lots of ways
Yeah.
that you can enrich it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have like really, really rich starting points. So, and
Cool.
end point as well. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the challenge. That was fun. Not so scary.
Good, good.
Also
Glad
because
to
I
hear.
didn't read out what I wrote. But I will read out what I finish.
That's great. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And I'll check in with you with my final piece.
Okay, sounds wonderful. I look forward to it, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.